Hello and welcome to Eastern Roman history. In 716, the Arabs launched a massive invasion of the Eastern Roman Empire with the intention of conquering Constantinople. Having just fought a civil war and suffering from years of turbulence, the Roman Empire was very weak. Caliph Suleiman raised 200,000 troops and built 5,000 ships to lead the sea offensive. 12,000 workmen were also employed, as well as 6,000 camels, 6,000 mules, and 3,000 mutawawi or volunteers. These were an auxiliary force of the unemployed. Many Arab financiers went too to make sure that they were recompensed for loaning these soldiers all of their mounts. Nikephoros the Patriarch mentions the Arab navy under Umar was 108,000 strong. Musalama, who was placed in charge of the expedition, sent Suleiman Muad by land through Anatolia and Umar by sea to go around the coast of Asia Minor. Musalama himself followed with the rest of the army behind the general Suleiman. Suleiman reached Amorion and laid siege to it. He started to proclaim Leo emperor, and soon so did the people of Amorion. However, he was still fully intent on conquering the city. During negotiations, Suleiman tried to encircle and capture Leo, whereas Leo delayed Suleiman so that 800 reinforcements could fortify the ungarrisoned town. Leo then convinced Musalama that he was working with them, and thus Musalama agreed not to harm anyone or raid any settlement in the Anatolikon strategia. The retention of Amorion was vital strategically. It was the HQ of the Anatolikon Thamata troops, but also controlled the route into Western Asia Minor. Without it, the Arab supply lines were seriously vulnerable. Musalama continued into Aquinon in Phryxikion. Musalama marched on Sardis and Pergamon and captured the city. Umar's fleet wintered in Cilicia. Nikephoros the Patriarch recollects the destruction wrought by the Arabs at this time. Nikephoros the Patriarch, Short History, chapter 52 to 53. As a result, the enemy were able to overrun the Roman state with impunity and to cause much slaughter, abduction, and the capture of cities. For this reason also the Saracens advanced on the imperial city. The Saracen army, after destroying numerous Roman towns, reached the city of Pergamon and set about besieging it. With Musalama and Suleiman now out of Aquinon, Leo marched to Nicomedia and, after capturing the emperor's son and, with the advice of the Senate and Patriarch, Theodosius III stepped down as emperor in 717, and Leo became Emperor Leo III. Meanwhile, the Arab navy ravaged the Asia Minor coast. Musalama heard of Suleiman's failure and marched his forces against Pergamon and Sardis, where he wintered at the end of 716. In 717, the Arab fleet departed Cilicia and sailed to Abydos, which Musalama had conquered with the passing of winter. The Islamic forces crossed the Straits of Thrace and invested Constantinople in June. Leo continued to dupe Musalama into thinking he would surrender Constantinople for the beginning weeks of the siege. This allowed Leo vital time to gather troops, build ships, ally with the Bulgars, and stock up supplies. The preparations of Constantinople by Anastasius II were essential because they permitted Constantinople to survive a protracted siege, which, in this case, lasted a year. Leo scorched the earth around the city after finding out Musalama had realized his deception and was now crossing the strait. Musalama landed his main force 6 miles away from Constantinople, and 4,000 cavalry 10 miles away. The Bulgars made good on their alliance and massacred this latter force, Musalama barely escaping with his life. The Hagarenes pillaged the countryside around Constantinople. Musalama constructed a palisade wall around the city to protect his siege camp from sallying troops. The Arabs assembled the siege engines they brought with them, but they did not use them. Both Theophanes and Nikephoros the Patriarch do not mention at all that the Arabs attacked the Theodosian walls. The Syriac sources tell us why. Chronicle of 1234, page 300 to 307, and Michael the Syrian, Chronicle, chapter 137. One day, the Bulgars gathered against Sarahil and his army, did battle with them, and killed a large number of them, so that the Arabs became to fear the Bulgars more than the Romans. Then their supplies were cut off, and all the animals they had with them perished for want of fodder. Nowhere in all Syria could any further news of them be obtained, for they were surrounded by water, and the Roman scouts prevented anyone leaving or entering the camp by sea. The Arabs' supply situation became so dire that they resorted to eating dead animals, dung, the dry pitch from their ships, and even dead corpses. Michael the Syrian adds that the Arabs resorted to eating soft stones and drinking their own urine because of the lack of fresh water. The price of a modius of wheat was 10 gold dinars. Considering that Roman soldiers' annual wage was an equivocal 10 solidi, this was a monumental sum for a private Arab soldier, and unsurprisingly, most could not pay. The Arabs did not dare forage for food to the west for fear of being annihilated by the Bulgars. Marsalama also lost the confidence of his men after lying about making promises to them that help was on its way from Caliph Suleiman, and that Leo would surrender Constantinople. These proved to be complete fabrications. In addition to being encircled on the land, the Romans gained control of the waters around Constantinople thusly. Suleiman, an Arab admiral, brought up the fleet to blockade the city and bring additional troops. Leo III sent out the fleet and managed to burn with Greek fire 20 ships that had fallen behind. This fleet continued on and wintered near Hebdomon, but did not contest the waters. The Greek fire and unfavourable and unfamiliar waters around Constantinople dissuaded the Caliphate's fleet from sailing back out to fight the Romans or ferry in more supplies. This meant the Romans were able to cut off the Arab supplies for the whole of winter. In a sense, the besiegers were themselves besieged. The winter of 717 to 718 was especially harsh, and according to the sources, the land remained snowbound for 100 days. This combination of Bulgar raids, Roman naval superiority, lack of supplies, disease, and frostbite led to the loss of the majority of the Arab forces in terms of both men and animals, such as horses and livestock. In the spring of 718, another Arab fleet sailed from Egypt and landed at Kalos Argos, and an African armada at Cytaros in Bithynia. They both landed on the Asian side of the Bosphorus for fear of the Greek fire. Though this Roman secret weapon had not destroyed many ships, perhaps its true strength was the fact that it crippled Arab naval morale. The Egyptian sailors from the First Fleet fled in the night and defected to Leo III. Immediately, Leo sailed out from Constantinople and burned the new Arab fleets with fire ships and captured the remaining supplies these fleets brought with them, further strengthening the Romans and depriving the Arab besiegers of salvation. After this victory, Sergios, strategos of Sicily, thinking that Constantinople was doomed, proclaimed Basil Onomaklulos emperor, renaming him Tiberius. Leo sent Paul, a trusted friend and experienced commander, to deal with this usurpation. Paul arrived in Sicily. Sergios fled to the Lombards, and after producing the orders of Leo III, the Sicilians surrendered Basil and the other ringleaders to Paul. Paul executed some, and tortured and mutilated the ringleaders, and sent them into exile. Sergius petitioned Paul that he would surrender himself if he was guaranteed his safety, which seems to have been respected. Constantine V, the son of Leo III, was born on July 718. Then, on the 15th of August 718, Caliph Umar II finally recalled Musalama. The Arabs lost further casualties on the way home, due to storms and strong winds that sank many ships and their crews. By the end of it, the Islamic army had suffered 150,000 casualties, roughly 3/4 of the total army that was originally sent. The loss of life and equipment was enormous, and the Caliphate never again tried to conquer Constantinople. This incredible victory, to sum up its significance, saved the Roman Empire from extinction, and, although it would take decades to truly recover, was the start of a long recovery during the 8th century, after an almost century-long decline in the 7th. In the wider context, the Siege of Constantinople in 717 to 718 was one of a string of victories over the Arabs that finally checked the Caliphate's unrelenting advance into the Old World. The Battle of Covadonga in 718 or 722 between Pelagius of Asturias with 300 men versus Munzir and Al-Qama of the Umayyad Caliphate with 2,800 men in Spain secured the kernel of civilization that would one day become Spain. The Battle of Tours in 732 between Charles Martel of Francia and Odo the Great of Aquitaine on one side with 15 to 20,000 men versus Abdul al-Rahman al-Ghafiqi with 20,000 to 25,000 men stopped the Umayyads from advancing any further into Western Europe near Poitiers. Finally, the Second Khazar-Arab War, especially the devastating Battle of Ardabil in 730 between the Khazar Khaganate and the Umayyads, which was a decisive Khazar victory, finally checked the Arab juggernaut, preventing it from advancing any further past the Caucasus. So, in many ways, the Siege of Constantinople marked the end of the great Arab conquests of the 7th century. I have been your host, Daniel Maynard. Please do like, subscribe and share this video, and this has been Eastern Roman History.